Decline in mass, an average man's lean mass decreases by approximately 10% every decade. On a living food diet, this is the highest protein diet in the world. I don't know if you know that. There's nothing that even resembles an animal, and this is the highest protein diet in the world. So I've had the great fortune of not only helping the sickest people in the world bring about their own recovery, but working with the top athletes. The top athletes have come to us for years. As you see, we even have Arnie Schwarzenegger now as a vegan. Why? Because men finally become men once they get rid of the nonsense. And they wake up. We can stop that. One of my good friends, I used to argue with this guy all of the time in Boston. He was the president of Tufts University. He was a doctor of nutrition also. And whenever they wanted to have hot information on the news, they'd pit me against him back. And we'd fight back and forth. But I loved the man and I respected him because he always stood by what he said. He may not have to agree with me. Now in America, you all want everyone to agree with you. Quit being wussies. Respect other people's opinion. Respect other people. Respect yourself so you can do that. And Dr. Meyer said, I better do a study to show that old people can get muscle. So he actually took centenarians, the medium age, listen to this, 102. He got 17 people over 100, medium age 102. And he pitted them against our then Olympic athletes, 16, 17-year-old kids. Guess what? We develop muscle at 100 the same exact way we do at 16, 17, 18. Maintaining it. Now here's the bummer. 19-year-old peacocks can walk around with their chest out like this with muscles they pumped a week ago. You're going to be pumping every other day. Remember when your bicycle tire went down? You're going to be doing it every other day. At least 3 days a week. This look familiar? And can you imagine, this poor doctor may be the guy at the ER. And when we look at some of the professions that have the lowest hormones, it's those professions. Because not only are they not sleeping, another great way to kill hormones, they are eating garbage out of machines. They're not eating food. They're eating stuff, substances out of machines. They're in the most stressful job on the planet. The two most stressful jobs in the world. Anyone know? The frontline Marines, Green Beret, and doctors in the emergency room. You ever see how they age? By the way, just 2 days ago, another study came out and showed that when you get under a lot of stress, it kills a particular form of enzyme that makes your hair go gray. Brand new study, just came out 48 hours ago. And the scariest thing I saw, I was just a kid. I was 6 years old, and one of my good friends, one of my best friends, David, his father was out playing baseball with him, 32-year-old guy, went back to throw the ball, had a coronary and died. And David was so shocked. He was a daddy. He was a real good daddy. He was just out with us playing like he was one of the kids all the time. And we were all shocked. But I didn't register what death was at that point. I thought he'd come back sometime. I was 6 years old. And David, this little blonde boy, his hair turned completely gray in 10 days. We were so shocked because the only thing we could relate to at that tender young age, he looks like our grandparents and the monster movies and all of that. That's what's happening to you. We're in a big monster movie, all of us. Turn on the news today, you get stressed. You're the most relaxed person in the world, just turn on the news for a minute. Drive on the highway. Things you don't even take into the mind and think it's driving on the highway. Yeah. I drive 80, 90 miles an hour all the time. I don't think it's stressful. You don't think it is? My poor wife does. Fatigue comes from people having low hormones, no nutrition, and lack of sleep. By the way, doctors die in their 50s commonly. Green Beret, Navy SEALs die in their 50s commonly. And as my good friend Dr. Cooper, Kenneth Cooper Center down in Texas, showed us a long time ago, in part it's malnutrition. And how he did that study, he looked at gold medalists from the Olympics. That if you'd asked me the day before I read this study, I would have said, other than people on the Hippocrates lifestyle, the strongest women and men in the world are gold medalists from the Olympics. He showed that they were all dying in their 50s. 40s, 50s, 60s. Why? Because they were doing the same amount of exercise they did in their 20s, but without what? nutrition. So that was before we understood the term oxidative stress and free radical damage. My friend Dr. Yu, who I mentioned 22 minutes ago, he was really interesting. We were having a conversation 30 years ago. He said to me, when I look at the disease that a person has and the depth of the disease, when I open them up as a surgeon, I can tell you how rippled and darkened their skin is. Those of us that are older, if you look at your hand, you have black spots on it, that's free radical damage. But when you have, for instance, a liver problem, fatty liver problem, or you had a coronary, or close to having a coronary, or you have cancer of some type, you open it up, and the entire organ is darkened colors. It's rotting. The skin is actually rotting. And when you start to look at all of this, it can all be prevented by the nutrients that nature and the universe put into the food called phytochemicals. Phytochemicals. So this is what a normal prostate looks like and an abnormal prostate. And the story today is if a man lives long enough, he's going to end up with a prostate problem and most likely cancer. Let me show you how different that is from when I began my work a half a century ago. I hardly saw men with prostate problems. Old men didn't get up 5 times in the middle of the night to urinate. But why? Now we're going to give you the big story. Because everything that man has created with heavy metals, which are on every bit of pesticide, fungicide, and herbicide in the world, and every chemical, we make 2,000 brand new chemicals every single year. Let me repeat it. All over the world, in laboratories, we create brand new chemicals that didn't exist last year, and we release them into the environment, and they mix with hundreds of thousands of other chemicals that become millions or possibly billions of chemicals. We don't even know what they are. And here's the bummer. They all look like estrogen. So as brilliant as a human body and anatomy it is, and I'm going to tell you, if you study anatomy and physiology, you start believing in God. I'm telling you the truth. Whatever that looks like to you. You finally realize that there's extraordinary connectivity among all living things. But we understand now that these chemicals make estrogens. And when you make estrogens, immediately young boys stop having testosterone. Young women, when you get lots of estrogen, start having high amounts of testosterone. And now men become women and women become men. And I won't make a commentary, but I have a lot of close women friends, and they said when they're single, it's really hard to meet a man now. And I'm reading through it, what they're saying. Men are gone. Now, not to say, John Wayne was a great example of a man. He probably had menopause, no question. He really had menopause. He was dragging his leg. Clint Eastwood, menopause. You see him now? Looks like a little wimp. But the reality is, our prostate started to become a problem when we started to pour deadly chemicals and heavy metals into your body. Anna Maria mentioned it earlier today. You're putting perfumes and cologne on. That is estrogenic. The clothes you wear, polyester, nylon, etc., are estrogenic. The seats you're sitting in are estrogenic. The rug that's in here is estrogenic. Think about that. Air pollution, water pollution. So, besides not living correctly, not sleeping, being under stress, all the things I've just mentioned, now we compound this dramatically by you being the first generations in the history of humanity that are exposed to deadly heavy metals and chemicals. If I do tests, which I've done on thousands of people for heavy metals, none of us have no heavy metals. I have heavy metals in my body, just smaller amounts than I did when I first tested myself. When I first tested myself, I was actually going to turn myself into a bank because I was worth a lot. So the number one sign that man is in full menopause, andropause, is this. So those guys that are here, and I won't make you raise your hand again, that are peeing like an elephant, you're in full blast andropause, menopause. This looks familiar? So I didn't realize when I became a nutritional guy, I was going to be a marriage counselor too. But over the years, Ann and I became marriage counselors. We're very blessed because we're totally in love and committed to one another. She's a mother of my children, my lover, my wife, my co-worker, everything. But we don't see that in many places. By the way, the statistics show it. Only 10% of partnerships are happy ones. 50% of you divorce, and the rest just endure one another. And that's not the way it's supposed to be. So several years ago, we had a couple come to us. They've been married for 35 years. Think of that. It's a long time. 35 years. So they were about ready to get a divorce, and we knew them. We said, well, you used to come here and kiss one another. You were like Valentino and his wife. You're just beautiful people. What's going on? Well, what did she say? He doesn't love me anymore. She thought he was running around with girls. He was just afraid to say he wasn't able anymore. I'm not able anymore. Rather than tell his best friend, his wife of 35 years, by the way, I'm having a problem, he just ignored her. Sounds a little familiar, ladies, and won't make you? And finally, we talked to him and said, this is your problem. But it ended up both of them had a problem. When we tested their hormones, both of them were in la-la land with hormones. And now their 50th anniversary happened. But what happened if we didn't intervene? What happened if I didn't know that? They would have divorced. They have something like, they made me upset. I have 8 grandchildren, they have 12. I'm jealous. How many of you have grandchildren? You know what I mean? Best things in the world. So this is not about only world leaders getting us into messes and wars because of their insecurity about their malehood, but this is about marriages breaking up and families breaking up. And we're not waiting till 50, 60, 70 anymore because 20-year-old kids have andropause because they've been doing nothing but eating McDonald's. They've been doing nothing but putting colognes on. They've been doing nothing but living in polluted areas of the world. Think about that.